Well, hello, party people. Welcome back to one of my, I guess we're calling these a vlog. Anyway, a chance to check in on just what's been going on since the last time I did this, which was not all that long ago. But I am once again, man, you've got to check out this new filter they have on, well, I'm not going to tell you the app because that would give away my secrets, but man, this filter makes it look exactly like I'm driving. I mean, even with the head movements and the camera movement and everything, it's pretty darn impressive. But at any rate, here I am on a vlog, and I kind of wanted to check in on a couple of things. I guess the theme of today, one of the major things, is um, TikTok and the war between the sexes. So, on a whim, oh gosh, forgot how long ago it was, but a friend of mine, Steve Skojic, decided that since I was in a little bit of a funk and I couldn't kind of get anything going work wise and, creatively and all that kind of stuff, he says, look, Cal, just get on TikTok and upload just like whatever, something quick, something, quick hits. And so, as chance would have it, he had this conversation with me like the day after TikTok got banned from the Apple App Store. So instead of doing things on TikTok, I decided I would do this 10 good minutes thing on YouTube. And so I was doing that. And the challenge was basically like, look, do it for 30 days. Just do something every day for 30 days. And although I did miss a couple of days, I did actually manage to do 30 uploads in the span of a month. So it was about a month, maybe 31 days, maybe 29. Didn't exactly count. Counting's not my forte, but anyway. So it was great. But the funny part of it is the whole reason I was going to do it is that I was going to go on TikTok and, just try it out. But it wasn't there. I could not download it. I had had it on my phone, gosh, like 3 years ago, and then I think I deleted it because of the whole Chinese Communist Party thing. But at any rate, uh, so in the middle of this 30-day challenge, I decided to go ahead and, um, well, I checked the App Store. There it was. So I downloaded it. And so last week, I started playing around with it. And boy, it has been a real mind opener, a real, just was not expecting to find what I found. So, what I've been doing is throughout the course of the day, I'll record a 1 minute blurb on, hey, this is what I'm doing as a teacher, or, oh, I'm prepping my classes right now, or I'm walking to school, like whatever, these little quick little hellos. And not really thinking that much of it. But so then 3 days ago, thereabouts, I did one on the last day of Paradise Lost with my students. And, it was the last day. And so I said a little something about it, and it got some real traction, which was interesting. I wasn't expecting a short TikTok video on Paradise Lost to really do much of anything, but it did. And kind of blew up a little bit. Not blew up, that's in relative terms. Let's not go crazy here. But, I got like 1,000 views thereabouts in the span of a couple of days. So that was interesting to me. So I decided that the next day I'm grading these quizzes. I'm looking at my kids' answers and to the Paradise Lost stuff. And it just really hit me that chapters 9 and 10, books 9 and 10 of Paradise Lost are just an amazing insight into psychology. I mean, there really are few things ever, that written that are as keenly psychologically insightful. Um, and of course, it is the psychology of Adam and Eve. And of course, Adam is a man, Eve is a woman. And so it is just hovering right over that sort of that age old, you know, divergence between men and women. So, anyway, I go on TikTok and I say something really super benign like, hey, I've been thinking about Paradise Lost, I've been thinking about my students, I've been thinking about the world, and man, I'm really concerned that men and women are just, need to figure out how to get along. And I do believe this, by the way, that the biggest concern we have, the most pressing issue we have, like as a civilization, is how are men and women to get along. And this is something I've been thinking about for quite a long time. Um, I know Mary Harrington has gotten into this on a couple of occasions, and I think at a NatCon conference about a year and a half to 2 years ago, she entitled a piece, or she included in her piece about the CADs, the RADs, and the TRADs. And her contention is that all three of them are really kind of getting something wrong, and the most pressing issue of our time is, in fact, how are men and women going to get along. And so I really think she's right. I took some issue with a couple of things she said, but basically I think she's correct. I do believe that it is the pressing issue of our time. And I have linked below here in the show notes a link to her piece from NatCon. Very good. So anyway, I put up this like really benign video on the TikTok, and boy, like right away, I got all of these responses. And what it revealed to me is that we have a much bigger problem on our hands, and it is not just an intellectual one. It is a deeply consequential, what I would call a sociological problem. It's like pre-political. And what I mean by that is we're in a bad way. Men and women have really done a number on each other. We have hurt each other in profound and really sad ways. And so, almost without an exception, all of the comments were from women, or at least accounts purporting to be women. Fine, I don't even know if that distinction matters, but you follow me. And all of them are like, I've been abused, I've been hurt. It's not until men, stop, they have all these acronyms that you use on TikTok, SV for sexual violence, DR for date rape. I mean, there's all these different things. Basically, all of these are testaments to very real ways in which women have been, abused by men. And of course, I know all of that to be true. But what struck me was how different TikTok was from Twitter or X. On X, people rag on X all the time, and I think a little bit unfairly, to be honest with you. But they rag on X all the time, and all this hell site, this is a hellscape, and da da da. And it's nasty, it's evil. But what I have found, to the contrary, that X is fun. It's a great medium. Yes, of course, you've got your trolls, but you mute those, you block those. But on the whole, I would say that the discourse on X is actually pretty darn good. It's intellectual, and I follow a number of accounts that align with my priors. I have found a number of accounts that do not align with my priors, but have been good faith interlocutors, good faith conversation partners. And so on the whole, I have found my experience on X to be really quite extraordinary. But man, X is really different from TikTok. TikTok is just hyper emotional, hyper limbic. Everyone is acting and reacting, with raw nerves, frayed nerves, destroyed nerves, even. And the image that I've gotten very quickly is that the problems that I sensed between men and women, radical feminists perhaps on one side, and radical, black pill, guys on the other side, it's way more pronounced than I had even imagined. And I do not know how we come back from this pitched battle. And it is a pitched battle. I mean, it's bad out there. And you know, of course, you can't take away a person's experience. If you've been abused or maligned, um, you've been abused or maligned. I'm not going to try to take away that experience. But what I am concerned about is that there are just no governors, no external um, guardrails against bad behavior. And I'm not talking about bad behavior like murder. Obviously, we have rules against that, laws against that, rape, the same way, of course. But there's just a load of bad faith behavior that falls between the cracks almost. And to me, the culprit, the thing that I look at, to blame, it's not men and it's not women. It's the sexual revolution. And the sexual revolution gets supercharged when it joins forces with second wave feminism. And that's a tough one. It's a really tough one. With the advent of the sexual revolution, the spirits that it harnesses, the spirits that it kind of hijacks are, of course, two potent human spirits. The spirit of agency, the spirit of freedom, the spirit of liberation, even. And those spirits are potent and powerful, but unless they are somehow harnessed towards some kind of shared telos, some kind of shared end, some kind of shared channeling of these impulses, they are wildly destructive. And so I want to use the image of a combustion engine as just a quick kind of explainer as to what I'm thinking here. And again, I'm not a mechanic. I teach poetry for a living, people, but I am currently not driving in a car right now. Just the filter makes it look that way. But I do know enough about the way that engines work that it is extraordinarily powerful because right in the hood of the car that I'm not driving right now are, let's say 6 cylinders. And within these cylinders, a bit of gas is injected into it. A spark is made in that cylinder, creating an explosion, which then pushes the piston up and down and up and down and up and down, and that of course generates horsepower to the axles, which generate power to the wheels, and therefore my car, which I'm not driving right now, goes. Now, it's a remarkable technology because right in front of the car, right in front of the seat that I'm not sitting in right now, in the car that I'm not driving in right now, are a series of multiple explosions coordinated and channeled in such a way that takes all of that explosive energy and puts it into the propulsion of my car. The explosion in and of itself is not a bad thing, but if there's a glitch in the cylinder, if there is, if the engine lacks integrity, then what happens is that explosion is not channeled into the drivetrain of my non-existent van that I'm not driving right now, but instead it blows up, and like a bomb. And I liken what we have been living through for the past 50 or so years, basically my lifetime. I was born in 1973, so Generation Rho, which really is the great accomplishment of the sexual revolution. But I don't really want to get into politics as such. I just want to get into what has happened as a result of the the sexual revolution. All of that energy had been channeled basically and imperfectly, but basically into marriage and family. Now, I'm not here to relitigate that right now, but I just want to get into this that, once no fault divorce becomes the law of the land, the sexual revolution is given free reign, and as soon as those mores, you look at the mores basically of, I don't know, let's call it 1959 and the mores of 1969 as a sort of simple explanation. The change is seismic, and so prior to the sexual revolution, we know that those sexual impulses were closely guarded. And then after that sexual revolution, those impulses were not only not guarded, but they have been celebrated as net power, net goods, right? It's net good. There's no loss, there's no cost. It's all good. Be liberated, be free to do what I want any old time, as the song at the end of my high school career crooned, which is such a dumb song, right? But at any rate, that has really been, the dominant ethos of the world that I have was born into and have grown into. And now what I see as an adult with my own children, and with my own students, is the default of the world, and as Rob Henderson has pointed out in his notion of luxury beliefs, that luxury beliefs fall inequitably harder on the lower and low class as they do upon the upper and high class people. So, the sexual mores of someone, of a movie star, are manageable because the movie star has loads and loads of cash at their disposal, right? So that, it's really easy, or let's just say it's easier to be a single mom when you can pay a nanny and a cook and a gardener and a housekeeper and all those kinds of things. If you are a single person without those resources, having a child out of wedlock is radically painful, radically consequential. And so, anyway, and so when I went on TikTok and I put this really benign video up there, it was abundantly clear that these people on TikTok, these women who were commenting on my TikTok feed, had been destroyed by the lack of restraint. And of course, as is the patois of our time, everybody blames the patriarchy, right? And what I gently pointed out is that patriarchy is not the problem. Um, it's not the rule of the fathers that is the problem. It is the rule of might makes right. It's the rule of the jungle that we currently live in. There are no external governors against very bad behavior. And of course, very bad sexual behavior, as Louise Perry has brilliantly pointed out in the case against the sexual revolution, that the costs of the sexual revolution fall wildly disproportionately upon the weak, the innocent, and the vulnerable. And by the percentages, those are women. The sexual revolution eats up women more so than it eats up men. And so that the great sort of cry of the sexual revolution is that, isn't it great that women can now behave as poorly as men, unchecked from any kind of external barriers? And you might say, oh, well, that doesn't mean you can't have internal checks on your behavior. Of course you can have internal checks on your behavior. I mean, I'm all for that. But we know that absent the external checks on our behavior, how strong are those internal governors, really? I have found in my own life that when those internal governors are called upon to control me, they're not always so strong. They're not always so potent. They're not always so powerful as I might like them to be. Certainly as I would like them to be in retrospect when I feel bad for whatever horrible thing I have done. So anyway, we live in a world with very few of those external guardians of behavior, and so we have defaulted to this really kind of lame, uh, and impotent notion of consent, and that this, relying on consent to be the kind of cure-all in society is woefully naive and woefully inadequate. And we need to stop kidding ourselves that um, you know consent is enough to guard and protect our weak, our innocent, and our vulnerable. Um, and my brief foray into TikTok has suggested to me that the pain and the suffering and the loss and the brokenness are well beyond what I had anticipated. Um, and what are we going to do about it? Well, one of the reasons why I kind of went on over to the TikTok space is that I know how much my students, for instance, are um, on TikTok all the time. And I'm not trying to go be like the savior over there, but I want to give people some sort of counter to the narrative of what they're finding in TikTok. Because in TikTok, like, if you're a man, women are terrible. If you're a woman, men are terrible. And there's no kind of conversation beyond that. And it is really startling. I mean, I'm married. I have kids, but I look at my kids like, how are these people going to figure out how to create lives together, form bonds that turn into marriage, that turn into children? I mean, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this in a world in which everybody preaches center yourself, you know um, you know you don't need a man, you don't need a woman, all that kind of messaging, and there are distinct, sort of female versions of that, and there are distinct male versions of that. And one of the reasons why I brought up Paradise Lost is that if you look at Paradise Lost, it is a sort of a perfect kind of encapsulation of, disagreement, fall, use and abuse, anger, all the stages of grief, and then finally reconciliation. And what is so profound about Milton's story is that it is Eve who provides the necessary um, spark or change that allows each of them some space to forgive one another. And what I saw on TikTok was not only are people embittered, and again, it sounds like they had really good reason to be embittered. I'm not trying to talk them out of the bad stuff that happened to them, but there's no arbitrating system with which to deal with this, and so everyone is being preached to lean into their pain, to kind of lean into their hurts. And instead of looking for reconciliation, people are looking to win an argument. I remember one time I was listening to something that Jordan Peterson was talking about, and he said, what, the problem with arguing in the confines of a relationship or marriage is that, you can't argue to win, because if you win, you lose. The only thing that you can do is you're trying to um, reintegrate yourself with your partner, reintegrate so that you can rebuild a kind of necessary bond. And everything that I saw on TikTok the other day was just fire hose of poison. And again, please hear me. I'm not trying to be, sort of super judgmental about this, right? I mean, clearly these people had been hurt, you know, but what are we going to do? Like, where are the adults who might help arbitrate and help these hurt people sort these things out? I mean, where are they? Where are the parents? So everybody was complaining about the patriarchy, the patriarchy, the patriarchy. It's like, well, I know what my dad would have done. I know how my dad would have handled things. I know how me as a dad would handle things. Like, I wouldn't let my daughter get taught treated that way. I wouldn't let my son treat his girlfriend or spouse or wife that way. No way, no how. Right? So where are those kind of governors? And then you sort of unpeel it a little bit. You're like, oh, because none of us feel like we have a right to tell anybody how to live their lives. And I get the idea, I get the sentiment, but if we're going to insist on this model, if we are going to insist on not playing the role of the adult who tells the kids behaving badly or the younger people behaving badly what's up, then where are they going to get this from? And so now all you're going to have is you're just going to have a bunch of broken people breaking other people over and over and over again. It becomes a kind of power game in which, in power games, in Games of Thrones, as they say, you either win or you die. And so how can you approach relationships in the spirit of the Game of Thrones? Like, that's just brutal, people. You know, because if you win, you don't get what the heart longs for, which is connection, which is intimacy, which are precisely those kinds of things which you're trying to build. But instead, it's you get what you get. You get what's yours, and you can't worry about other people. Well, this is a death script, right? This is a death work. There's no coming out of that unless adults are going to kind of step up and both form young people with a more positive vision of the relationship between the sexes and some kind of adult superstructure that will help enforce and arbitrate these kinds of breakdowns. So I was not expecting this in my Twitter foray. I was expecting, like the brain rot that my kids always make fun of. My students and my own children make fun of. I was expecting, those ridiculous videos, in which, a bunch of guys, get hit in the nuts, or, cat videos or dog videos or all the kind of things that I thought I was going to see um, on TikTok. But because I had posted something about, old books, because that's my thing, I put this up there, and all of a sudden I'm getting inundated. The algo does its thing, and there's like, oh, somebody's talking about the relationship between the sexes, and then everybody kind of seizes upon it, and you're like, wow, there are forces that are driving the conflict. So it'll be interesting to see how my foray. Let's see what I'm doing on time here. It'll be interesting to see what my foray into TikTok will yield beyond this, but it has already been very telling and interesting to me in ways, honestly, that I'm genuinely surprised by. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised by that, but I know that the kind of discourse that is being promoted, and I don't want to pick on TikTok here, but this is just sort of social media in general, is not the language of conciliation, not the language of understanding, not the language or the models of let's work through this, but it's the language of like philonikeia, victory, not wisdom. And, you know, it seems like the more natural way to behave is in this power struggle, but maybe we need to redouble our efforts to offer an alternative so that we're not trying to win, we're not trying to beat each other, but we're trying to find a way to get along. Because, look, I've been teaching for a long time, and, I am not naive. I am not naive about marriage. I know it's difficult at times. I get it, but I know that children need a mom and a dad, right? I know that, you know, you know, my students who have a mom and dad tend to do better, generally speaking, broadly speaking. Again, I'm not trying to kind of make any sort of specific arguments in that regard, but we just know that kids deserve this, and yet we have had now multiple generations of adults who have put their needs above some kind of corporate need. I don't mean corporate as in business, but corporate as in the body. That when you sign up to be a mom and a dad, right? Part of the promise is that you are going to um, help provide a space and a place to grow as to adults, but also to create a space for children to flourish and thrive, right? I mean, we do in fact have a responsibility. Civilizationally speaking, we have a responsibility to um, create the next generation. And creating the next generation is not just sort of, you know, uh, a moment in the sack, as my mom used to say, right? It's not just that, right? It's something much more deeply committed and long term. And, you know, the sexual revolution, is the bad guy. And any talk of, you know, promoting the sexual revolution in the year of our Lord 2025 is not only misguided, but it's like bordering on evil. You are not free to do what you want any old time. We have responsibility to each other. We have a responsibility to our spouses. We have a responsibility to our children. We have a responsibility to our world. We have to regain some sense of the commons, as people will talk about it, because if TikTok is any indication, right, of, of the darker reality out there, we are in for a world of pain. I really do mean, I'm really trying not to be, um, you know, dramatic, or histrionic. I'm really trying to sort of be serious. Anyways, that's kind of what's going on with TikTok. Um, this week, we have exams, so I'll be doing a lot of grading. I'm not sure how much content I'll be able to put up there, but a lot of times when I'm grading, ideas will come to me because I'm reacting to the things that my students will say. So stay tuned. I'm sure I will have plenty to say about this, that, and the other. Um, and then after that, we go on break for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, and I think I'm going to take a couple of college trips with my daughter. I have no idea how we're going to pay for that. We'll see. It'll be interesting. But we're going to do that, and do my normal thing, do my reading. There continues to be deeply consequential things going on. I want to do a show on. I think I really need to do some stuff with Diana Pasulka's work here, especially if those of you who are watching from the corner really need to get into some Diana Pasulka stuff. The UAP phenomena, the emergence of a new religion. I think it's very, very important. I don't think people are really paying enough attention to this because there's a strange place where religion and aliens are meeting, and it's an important thing for us to be talking out loud about. But other than that, I guess that's it. I guess that's all. All right. Well, this has been a little bit over 30 minutes, which has been pretty fun. Um, you know, it's fun not being in a car, not recording a video like this. So anyway, until next time, thank you. If you like it, hit like and subscribe. I'm still kicking around some ideas for classes, both online and in MeetSpace. So stay tuned in this space for more details forthcoming. Cheers and God bless you. Hit the like and subscribe.